What do you think?
I think we're dead meat. Real dead meat.
You're dead meat!
Go ahead and laugh, you guys. If I ever find a little bastards that did this, they're dead meat.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm excited today because we're going to be looking at Pumpkinhead, released in 1988. As you all may know from my Pumpkinhead ranking video, the original Pumpkinhead became my #1 favorite horror movie of all time. And this is because from how just enjoyable Pumpkinhead really is. It's a truly underrated film that should be really appreciated more. And I think it's mostly this good because of its director, Stan Winston. In my opinion, Stan Winston is amongst an exclusive group of horror creators, which a lot of the horror fandom knows for doing things like movies and special effects. For examples, we have the legendary John Carpenter, who's known for making movies like Halloween and The Thing, legendary Wes Craven, who made movies like Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream, and personally, I think Stan Winston is the third one on that top 3 of best horror creators. Ironically, however, Stan Winston isn't known for Pumpkinhead. He's mostly known for movies like Aliens, Terminator, Predator, and Jurassic Park, as him and his company did the special effects for all of those movies. His special effects team did amazing on the movies that they worked on. Go check out Aliens, go check out Terminator, Predator, Jurassic Park, and just admire the amazing special effects by this talented man and his company. I find it kind of funny that a man who has been a part of so many popular horror flicks over the years isn't that known for his first directorial debut. However, all things do end soon, and we have to say rest in peace to the great Stan Winston. Alongside that, even though I probably won't mention him again in this video, let's say rest in peace to Wes Craven as well. How many kills will Pumpkinhead rank up during his vengeance? Let's find out. Get to the kills. The movie opens with a title card. Ooh, nice and toasty. We then open in a farm in 1957 where we see a father loading his rifle. The man's wife tucks their child, Ed Harley, into bed while the father heads out to put the horse in the barn. He returns quickly and heads back inside and locks the door. But I'm sure there's nothing wrong going on outside.
Should I be afraid?
Yeah, I think you should. This man named Clayton is currently running away from something in the forest, but the audience can't see what it is. Clayton eventually ends up at the couple's house and begs to be let in, however they sit in silence and don't say anything. Clayton then starts to cry out, "I did not kill her," and it's been theorized that he ended up killing a little girl or he was accused of it. The father then gets up and gets over to the door and begins to threaten Clayton, telling him to get out of here because he needs to protect his family. However, before the father can get any passion to let Clayton inside, Clayton starts running away because Pumpkinhead catches up to him again. Clayton ends up tumbling down a hill into a large puddle, Dennis Nedry style, before Pumpkinhead grabs him and begins to repeatedly slam him against the ground. Ed ends up walking over to the window and witnesses Clayton's final breath for the first kill of the movie. We then cut to the present with an adult Ed Harley played by Lance Henriksen, who, I just love Lance Henriksen. He lives out deep in the country with his son Billy and their adorable dog Gypsy, who, if you recognize that dog, it's Mushroom, the dog actor who was also in Gremlins as Barney. As soon as I watched this movie, I recognized that dog. It's my favorite dog actor, man. Then we cut to some cute father and son moments, and this idea was brought up on set by Lance Henriksen himself because his grandma used to do it for him. Later, Billy gives his father a necklace, which will be a prominent thing for Ed Harley among the franchise. However, these two have had enough cute father and son moments. Let's cut to our main characters of this movie. Well, the secondary main characters. This is our group of teens, because every horror movie has a group of teens. The guy driving the car is Steve, and next to him is his girlfriend Maggie, who's played by Carrie Remsen, who we literally just saw as Nicole in Ghoulies 2. In the backseat, we've got Chris and Tracy, and in the car behind them is Steve's brother Joel and his girlfriend Kim. Ed, Billy, and Gypsy then head out to Harley's Grocery. It's the store that Ed owns and works at. Okay, I'm kind of getting tired of these cute father and son moments, because it's going to be really sad to think about later. The teens then arrive at Harley Grocery and meet Gypsy and Billy, and Joel kind of becomes an asshole for a second. As Joel takes off on his dirt bike, a truck with a bunch of kids on the back then ride up. After Joel sets out on his dirt bike, a truck with a bunch of kids on the back rolls up, and this guy named Mr. Wallace steps out. I think he's the uncle of these kids, so I guess they're his nephews and nieces. The only one we get the name of is the oldest of the group named Bunt, who becomes a pretty well-known character amongst the franchise. One of the little boys then takes a rock, I guess, and to get him back, the rest of the kids start chanting the Pumpkinhead poem around him. Hearing the poem makes Ed flash back to his childhood when he witnessed Clayton get killed by Pumpkinhead in the forest. I'm not gonna lie though, this poem's pretty catchy.
Stop it! Stop it!
Well, I didn't think it was that bad, sheesh. After Ed checks up everything Mr. Wallace needs, Ed realizes he forgot the feed back at his house, and he tells Mr. Wallace that he'll drop it off at his house later. Ed takes Billy and Gypsy inside because of the fact that Joel and Steve are outside on their dirt bikes, and tells him to stay in the house while he's gone. After everyone else leaves, Gypsy ends up getting out the house and runs at Joel and Steve on the dirt bikes. And honestly, this is a really good opportunity for a dog to die in the movie, but thankfully the dog doesn't die. Unthankfully, well shit, the kid died. Well, that's going on the kill count. Even though it was an accident, Joel makes himself so much more guilty and he straight up runs away. Steve tries to stop him, but both Joel and Kim take the car and ride up to the cabin they're staying at. Steve volunteers to stay behind and he sends everyone to the car to go to the cabin to call for help. Okay, I understand that a kid just got killed, but you don't need to drive so recklessly. Ed soon arrives back to find his dead son. Ed takes Billy, and even though Steve offers to help, Ed gives him a pretty creepy death stare. Chris, Tracy, and Maggie soon arrive at the cabin, and Tracy runs ahead of the group to get to the cabin to the call for help. Also, that cabin is the same one that was used as the Jarvis house in Friday the 13th Part 4. In the cabin, Joel becomes a complete psychopath, and he cuts the phone line and prevents Tracy and Chris from leaving the house. Chris stands up to Joel and manages to punch him, but Joel just responds by knocking him out with a piece of wood. Ed takes Billy back to the house and just kinda cuddles with his dead body, which it is a little weird, but you gotta feel bad for Ed. Steve then arrives to the house and finds Chris and Tracy locked in a closet, but Joel prevents them from opening it. Joel then asks Steve if Steve told Ed that it was all an accident. However, Steve just replies with, "He just gave me a death stare." Ed then heads down to the place where Mr. Wallace lives, to 1, drop off his feed, and 2, to ask him about some information. Ed wants to know the location of an old woman that is supposedly said to be a witch, because he wants to see if she can bring Billy back to life. Mr. Wallace denies knowing anything about an old witch, however Ed ends up forcing him by giving him more money, and Mr. Wallace just tells him that she can't help him, and Ed leaves empty-handed. However, as Ed's driving away, Bunt stops him and tells him he knows who he's looking for, and that she's a witch named Haggis. However, he's gonna need something if he wants to know the location. So Ed just gives him the 10 he just got from Mr. Wallace. A little while later, they arrive at Haggis's hut, and Bunt just kind of pieces out. Ed heads inside to find Haggis just creepily sitting in a chair staring at a fire. I think this makes Haggis a little bit more creepier than Pumpkinhead. But even after Ed gives Haggis all this gold he has, she still can't resurrect the dead. However, she has the second best option, getting a hitman. Well, kinda. She sends him to this old pumpkin patch, where in the middle of it is the corpse of Pumpkinhead, which he needs for the ritual. While he's passing through there, he finds a dead person, but the person's already a skeleton, so that won't be going on the kill count. Ed climbs to the top of the pumpkin patch, and we get a really good wide shot of the whole pumpkin patch around. It's so unnerving with all the smoke and the music, it's great. While Ed digs up the Pumpkinhead corpse, we cut back to our characters with Joel very irresponsibly pointing the shotgun barrel right to his forehead. Is he an idiot or something? Ed takes the corpse back to Haggis, who has already prepared the ritual, and in a pretty painful to watch scene, she slices his hand open for blood to go in a little cup. And after getting some more blood from Billy's corpse, she pours the blood onto the corpse, and the demon of vengeance rises. As Ed is leaving, he nearly gets in a car crash because of the effect that the summoning of Pumpkinhead is already having on him, and then he gets a hallucination of Billy. Ed takes some deep breaths, and then realizes that it was just a hallucination. Back with our other characters, Maggie decides to randomly just get up and walk out of the cabin for no reason. I guess she's under stress. And Steve quickly follows after her. Back with Ed, he buries Billy's body next to what I can presume is his dead wife, Betty. Meanwhile, Maggie is just running out into the forest, and Steve catches up to her and manages to calm her down. However, I don't think she's going to stay calm for too much longer.
Sure his father's taking care of him.
The effect of being linked to Pumpkinhead is as soon as he begins to start killing, you feel the same pain as the victim is dying, and you see flashes just like Ed is doing here. Pumpkinhead drops Steve to the ground, and Maggie tries to help him up. However, Pumpkinhead drags him away and kills him off screen for our third kill of the movie. After that, Ed realizes he's made a big mistake. Back with the other characters, Joel finally decides to let Chris and Tracy out of the closet, and surprisingly, they don't immediately attack him. However, panic ensues as Maggie comes inside screaming about how she saw the devil kill Steve. Chris and Joel take rifles and head outside to search for Steve, while Tracy and Kim stay behind and try and calm Maggie down. Back at his house, Ed washes his face and I guess drinks some beer or whiskey or whatever that is. Back with Tracy and Kim trying to calm Maggie down, when Tracy walks into the kitchen, we get a great spook when we see Pumpkinhead pass by the window. Feels like something out of Friday the 13th. Thankfully, Tracy is smart, so she arms herself with a cleaver. Back with Chris and Joel, they find a piece of clothing that I guess Steve was wearing, and they find blood on it, so they rush back to the cabin. When they rush back to the cabin, Tracy starts to get a little bit of her final girl act in and says they need to get the hell out of there. However, Maggie still wants to go out and find Steve, and Joel agrees, so when they run out the door, suddenly Steve's body falls right in front of Maggie. Maggie's terrified and she pulls Steve's body down, but then gets grabbed by Pumpkinhead and dragged on the roof. Joel and Kim drag Steve's body inside, and Tracy runs over to the other side of the house to try and save Maggie. Meanwhile, with Ed, he's loading his rifle when, because of Maggie getting killed, he starts to shake and stagger again. Then we get what, in my opinion, is the most brutal and disturbing death of the whole movie, as Pumpkinhead scratches a cross right into her forehead and then just seems to throw her around. Back with Joel and Kim, they cover up Steve's body. Meanwhile, Ed heads back to Haggis's hut and begs her to make it stop. However, she can't do that. Ed decides to take this into his own hands and decides to hunt down Pumpkinhead and kill him. Back with Joel and Kim, we get the most disturbing sight of the movie as Pumpkinhead puppets Maggie's body and presses it against the window really brutally before finally killing her by crushing her head through it. It's so disturbing that it causes Kim to straight up pass out. Joel, now panicking, grabs a machete and heads outside to find the car and one of the dirt bikes completely destroyed, and then yells out, "I'm the one you want." He heads back inside to help Kim, but we finally get a good look at the Demon of Vengeance itself. Pumpkinhead takes Kim, and Chris and Tracy return to the cabin and find Joel with a broken wrist and looking for Kim. As they're searching, they look up to find Pumpkinhead at the top of a really tall tree holding Kim. He dangles her around before finally dropping her, and Kim falls and breaks her back on a large boulder for our 5th kill of the movie. Ed makes it to the cabin and heads inside to see all the massacre and dead bodies, realizing that this was truly the worst mistake of his life. The trio runs down to the village where Mr. Wallace lives and knocks on doors trying to get let in, but something they gotta know is if you intervene with Pumpkinhead's vengeance, you die along the way, which is why nobody wants to help them. The trio then makes it to a truck and tries to get inside, but the man who owns the truck pulls up on them with a rifle and tells them to get out of here because they're marked. And even though Tracy asks him a question, before he can answer it, Pumpkinhead arrives. The man nopes out of there, and as Pumpkinhead gets closer, Joel jumps for the rifle. However, Pumpkinhead is suddenly shot by Ed, who arrives on time. Ed shoots Pumpkinhead again, and it seemingly takes him down for the count, and Joel walks over to make sure by shooting Pumpkinhead right in the skull. I think he's definitely dead. Oh, shit, never mind. Because of this, Ed starts to stagger down, preventing him from stopping Pumpkinhead, who grabs the rifle and impales Joel with it for the 6th kill of the movie. As Chris and Tracy run away and Pumpkinhead makes sure Joel is dead, the dog that was with the man earlier decides to just bite Ed. I don't know why, but it shows the audience that Pumpkinhead can feel the same pain that Ed does. Meanwhile, in Mr. Wallace's house, they hear the sounds of Chris and Tracy begging to be let in, and even though Bunt wants to let them in, Mr. Wallace just sends them to his room. And Chris and Tracy just sit outside the door and hug each other. Back inside again, Bunt is getting dressed because he decides that he's going to go out and help Chris and Tracy. And then his sister, possibly Dahlia, the sister that we see in Pumpkinhead Ashes to Ashes, asks him what he's doing, and he tells him to keep it a secret, and that he's going to go help them. And she tells him to be careful, and Bunt heads out to be a hero. Bunt heads outside and helps Chris and Tracy, and Chris literally just grabs the poor kid and just starts shaking him, asking him for information. Seriously, he's trying to help you. This part annoys me so much. After Chris stops shaking him, Bunt leads them to a place where he thinks they'll be safe from Pumpkinhead. Back with Ed, he apologizes to Joel. However, it's ironic that Joel was the one to actually kill his son in the first place. Bunt leads Chris and Tracy to this old broken church, and he thinks it will be safe from Pumpkinhead because it's a holy place and maybe he dislikes it. In the church, Bunt tells him everything he knows about Pumpkinhead, and I'm gonna need to take a second. I just can't stop seeing the resemblance. After a painfully long chat between everyone here, Pumpkinhead finally arrives to the church and shows that he has no problem with walking into it, and the trio quickly runs away. And then we get a random scene where Pumpkinhead ignores them and just walks up to a large wooden cross, grabs it, and just starts to break it. Even though it's kind of out of nowhere, at least we get some good shots of Pumpkinhead. Ed then heads over to Mr. Wallace's house and bangs on the door, threatening that he'll break it down. However, they're already one step ahead of him, and they send him packing. As the trio continues to run away, they eventually spot a dirt bike that is still intact. Chris walks over the bridge to get to it, however we get a great scene when it's revealed to be a trap. Tracy and Bunt then run away, and they end up encountering Ed, who tells them to get in the car, and he heads back to his little workshop. All while Chris tries to crawl away from Pumpkinhead and gets stepped on. I'm surprised that he ended up surviving the weight of that demon. However, Chris isn't dead. While Ed goes over to the garage to prepare for a final showdown with Pumpkinhead, Tracy and Bunt stay in the house and talk to each other before Tracy tells Bunt to stay here and she goes out to talk to Ed. Tracy heads out to talk to Ed and tries to just tell him that it was just an accident. However, Ed doesn't really give a shit about what she's saying. And then we see Ed made a badass flamethrower that he's going to plant and use on Pumpkinhead. Pumpkinhead soon arrives and he drops off Chris and heads inside to look for Bunt. He checks the closet where Bunt is hiding, and at first it seems like Pumpkinhead really can't find him.
Psych!
Back outside, Ed makes this really creepy-ass face that really got me when I first watched this. Pumpkinhead takes Bunt outside, and Ed walks outside to also face Pumpkinhead, but he gets caught by a nail and swings into a pitchfork, and Pumpkinhead reacts with pain. This is when Ed finally realizes that Pumpkinhead feels the same pain as him, and he knows what he has to do. However, before that, let's get this really terrifying and creepy shot of Pumpkinhead with his humanoid-looking face and that terrifying, sinister grin. This image probably stuck with a lot of people when they watched it. I imagine that did. To get off the pitchfork, Ed throws his flamethrower to the ground, and once he's free, he walks over to his car. Tracy then grabs the flamethrower and tries to use it on Pumpkinhead, but it's pretty obvious that a demon of vengeance would have a fire resistance. Pumpkinhead grabs Tracy and nearly kills her before Ed grabs a revolver, puts it to his head, and fires. Well, now Pumpkinhead is finally dead. Okay, no more damn surprises. Pumpkinhead grabs Bunt and Tracy grabs the gun and points it at Ed and finally ends this nightmare by shooting Ed to death, which also kills Pumpkinhead. With Pumpkinhead dead, its corpse bursts into flames as our three survivors watch on. And the movie ends with Haggis burying Ed's body as he now becomes the new Pumpkinhead. How many kills did Pumpkinhead get during his vengeance? Let's find out. Get to the... Let's get to the numbers. 7 people died in Pumpkinhead, with 5 of them being male and 2 of them being female. Golden Chainsaw for best kill goes to Joel. Yeah, Maggie's death was great too, but I loved when Pumpkinhead uses weapons to kill his victims, and also Joel really deserved his death. And Dull Machete for lamest kill goes to Billy. Yeah, I know he's just a kid, and it wasn't ideal for him to get a death by Pumpkinhead, but throughout the movie, it was just the most boring kill. And that's it. Pumpkinhead came out in 1988 and became my #1 favorite horror movie of all time. Next time we'll be looking at Baby Oopsie, but until then, I'm Hardcore Fan. See you next time.